welcome once again to INSEAD's LeaderCast series. My name is Charles Galenick, Dean of the EMBA. Today we have with us Vivienne Cox, who is the Executive Vice President CEO of Gas, Power, Renewables, and Shipping for BP. Vivienne created the BP Alternative Energy Group in 2005, and she's currently the CEO of this group. Today she'll be interviewed by Herminia Ibarra, who is our Cora Chaired Professor of Leadership and Learning.
So Vivienne, BP Alternative Energy is now 2 years old. I think it's 2 years old. What's new? What are your plans moving forward? And it'd also be great if you could give us a flavor of what it's like running some of the fastest growing energy businesses in the world today.
But it is only 2 years. It feels like a lot longer because so much has changed in 2 years. The marketplaces are growing fast, the technologies are changing, consumers' awareness of environmental issues has changed dramatically in 2 years. So a lot's changed. And I think one of the very interesting things about running a portfolio of businesses like this is that I've had to rethink strategy. The notion that you can set a strategy, which we did when we launched alternative energy, but the notion that you can set a strategy and that strategy will keep you going for any period of time actually is a myth. And I think it would be a big mistake to stick rigidly with the idea you first thought of, because you have to adapt constantly.
So is the idea that you put in a plan and then you adjust as you go along, or you just don't do your traditional planning and controlling in a normal sense?
We certainly do the planning. And I think that's a good discipline. It makes you look at what's out there, what's happening and what you could do. It makes you think about the resources you're going to need. And our limitation actually is capability, internal capability. It's not marketplace, it's not business opportunity, it's how fast can we grow our own capability, either by acquiring it or by growing it internally. So we do plans, but I think of those plans as really a way of keeping the whole organisation focused on what's possible and what's happening out in the marketplace. And I would say one of the biggest skills and one of the most critical capabilities to develop if you're going to grow very fast is the ability to sense all the time what's actually happening in the external world. Where's business going? What are competitors doing? What collaboration might be possible? What are consumers thinking? Be really focused on what's happening out there so that your judgments, when you make them, which will always be made on imperfect information. We probably have less information in these fast-growing businesses than I've had in traditional BP businesses. So you do it with less information, but you develop good intuition.
So does that mean that's changed how you think about your role as a chief executive because of the nature of the rapid growth? Are you doing different things as a leader than you might in a more established business? Has it changed your style to have had this experience of starting up alternative energy?
I don't think it's dramatically changed my style. But what it has shown is that actually parts of what I've been learning how to do as I've developed as a leader are actually essential in this business. I don't believe it would be possible to be successful if I sat at the top of this organisation and told people what to do. Because I can't know what's happening in every single aspect of this rapidly changing, quickly developing marketplace. And so the notion of creating a vision, sharing a sense of where we want to go, and then trusting people to get on with it, telling them what the boundaries are, whether they be in terms of financial control or compliance and ethics or satisfying regulatory and legal regimes. You tell them what the boundaries are, but actually I give people a lot of space. And that's something I've done for a long time, but I've understood and learned that actually in this environment it's even more important than it.
So it's been a good laboratory for
It's been
playing
great.
Out the style that you have grown into.
It has.
Where did that style come from?
I don't know really. Experience, I think. I mean, it's not the style and it's not the leadership model that I was taught. And it's not really the leadership model that I've observed as the predominant model around me, because the oil industry is quite a traditional industry. But one of the things I've always done is thought very deeply about what works and what doesn't. And I've always been quite critical, self-critical, and thoughtful about, as I've gone into situations or run businesses. And I've understood and come to understand that a lot of the things I'd been taught actually don't work terribly well. So this notion of determinism, the notion of sort of what I call instrumentality, the notion that I can control these things, can manage these things, and that the outcome I can define and know, my experience has just told me that that isn't the way the world actually works. It's a much more complex, messy, unstructured world that is actually built from a network of human relationships. And understanding that and playing into that is something that I've become better and better, and I keep on learning how to do.
Does it take a particular kind of person to thrive within that kind of style? Because you're talking about both a context and environment in which things are changing too rapidly to plan traditionally, combined with a style that allows things to grow organically. Now, is it something that people thrive under quite naturally, or is it something that some people enjoy and others have a harder time with?
I think it is that. I mean, there are some people who really like to know precisely what the envelope is that they're operating within, precisely what they're expected to deliver, precisely what the world's going to look like in 6 or 9 months' time. And people who get very uncomfortable with uncertainty and ambiguity. So my business tends to attract those people who actually are comfortable not knowing and are comfortable to work it out. So I think that there's a sort of self-generating, self-referencing part of all of this. It brings in the people.
It's a self-selection
Exactly.
piece. Yeah. And related to that, I mean, if you look at academic research, a very robust finding has been that companies that have been leaders in one area oftentimes miss the boat when it comes to a new technology, when it comes to something that's disruptive, new markets, new services. How do you now, as chief executive of this organization, either ensure or set the conditions to increase the likelihood that this does not occur, that you actually do become the leader you aspire to be in this sector?
The fact that we're prepared as a corporation to have this piece of business, which is really challenging a lot of our traditional business, which of course is still most of the money we earn and most of what we do. But the fact that we're prepared to do that, and we're prepared to tolerate people who challenge the existing business models, and now we've got a home for those sorts of people, gives me some confidence that we can keep on adapting. But time will tell.
This whole issue of climate change and the environment, at least from my understanding of it, has become quite a geopolitical issue. And I was just wondering, to get a little more insight into your role, how do you see your role in that whole debate and dialogue that's really on a world scale now? Are you part of that? Do you want to be part of that? What role do you play?
I mean, I think you're absolutely right. The issue of security of supply has actually provoked a lot of the conversation about climate change in many parts of the world. And with oil prices at $70 a barrel, the cost of importing energy has become such an important component of the US, the China, the India national budgets. So energy and its role in society has become a much more important question than it was even 2 years ago, and certainly was 5 and 10 years ago. And that's then started to bring into focus the whole issue of climate change and the environment. I mean, the way we see it, as an oil company, we're actually part of the problem. We produce the products that actually pollute the planet, but those products are in huge demand. And so we believe we have a responsibility to produce those products in the best way we know how, in terms of impact on the environment. But we also believe that there will be, because of these pressures that come from security of supply concerns, there will be shifts in technology, there will be discontinuous change. And we find it quite difficult to imagine that in 50 years' time, the world will be fueled by hydrocarbons. There may still be hydrocarbons in use, but predominant fuel for the world's energy needs will not be hydrocarbon. Now, 50 years isn't actually that long in our industry. Right. And so it's really a question of strategic importance to BP that we find a new business model, and that's really what alternative energy is about. It's about testing out these different business models with different technologies, different products that could give us something that's material and strategic for the corporation in 20 years' time and beyond. So it's a strategic question for BP. I personally also believe it's of fundamental importance to the world. And it's not just about hydrocarbons running out, but my own personal view, and this is a personal view, is that the way we run our businesses, the way we live our lives, the way we regulate our businesses, it's unsustainable, and we've got to find some different models. And so part of alternative energy is about new products, but in my mind there's also something about a different way of working that's important.
Can you say a little bit more about that? We've talked about that before.
So, and again, I'm speaking personally, and this is not, if you will, the official BP view. It's a very personal view. But for me, a leadership model and a business model which has sort of command and control, which has determinism as its central organizing principle, will not be sufficient going forward. It was great in the old days, the sort of beginning of the Industrial Revolution, where that was what was required. But now the world is changing so fast, the uncertainties, I believe, are much, much greater. The probability of discontinuity, I believe, is much higher. That sort of model won't work, and we need leaders who are much more capable of making sense of uncertainty, much more capable of understanding discontinuity, and who know how to access the networks of relationships between unusual players that I believe are going to be necessary to make the difference. So this notion of a networked society, of information travelling through networks and through systems which are not based on hierarchy, which are not based on the formal organisation structures, I believe will be increasingly important.
What would be an example of an untraditional form of collaboration or cooperation in this sector?
Well, one of the ones which we've got going at the moment is we've got this business called hydrogen energy, which is about making power, electric power, grid power from hydrogen, which could be produced from oil and gas or from coal, for a number of different sources. And then you take the CO2 which comes out and you put that back down in the ground. And so this is a way of taking your hydrocarbons and cleaning them up, producing hydrogen, producing power. And in that business, developing that business model, we've got collaborations now with Rio Tinto, a coal company, and with GE. We've got a technology collaboration with GE. We, as an oil company, are not used to working with a coal company, with GE, and so it's a new collaboration. On the technology front, we're working with a number of small venture capital firms. Again, we typically don't work with those companies, and yet because this is all new, because the technology is being developed very rapidly, that's what we're going to have to do. So it's new ways of working. I think the old model of saying, he's a competitor, I win, you lose, just won't work.
Yeah. Let me take this in a little bit of a different direction to ask you a bit about your career. If you look at your CV, your time at BP has really been a string of startups, things that you have created from the very start. So my question is, what's next?
I mean, you're right, and it's quite, when I look back on it, it's quite surprising really that I've been able to start up new businesses inside this huge, great organisation. That you
I didn't realise there were so many until I plotted it out.
Yeah. And it's what I love doing. I love sort of challenging the existing model and saying, actually, I think there's a better way. Can we work out what it is together? And one of the characteristics of what I've done is actually really to harness the wisdom of the people. I firmly believe that inside the organisation or inside the group of people that you access, they know what the answers are. they can come up with the new solutions, they can come up with the better ways of working. And so my task as a leader, I think, is simply about giving them the space and the opportunity to come up with the answers. And so I haven't really created new businesses. What I've done is said, there's a missing here, there's a gap, or there's an opportunity here. Let me allow people, and they'll come up with it, and they do. And alternative energy was a good example. It wasn't my idea. I didn't have that in my mind as a business opportunity 6 or 9 months before we created alternative energy. It came from.
So you see yourself more as a catalyst.
An orchestrator and a catalyst,
Yeah.
that's right. And I give permission.
Yeah.
And I provide cover, sort of air cover for people to do these things. You ask me what's next, I don't know. That's again the sort of, that's the characteristic of what I've done, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, let me ask it this way. There's a truism that people who are entrepreneurs, whether organizational entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs, enjoy the thrill of something new, creating something new or planting the seeds, and get a little bored when it comes to running operations. And you're moving in that way now. Is that your style as well? Or do you actually enjoy both, being the catalyst and then seeing it through?
I think if I'm really honest, it's the setting it up.
The setting that
it's
up.
Getting it, getting the new ideas, the challenge to the system, creating something new. And I am less good, there's no doubt about it, I am less good at the rigour that's required day in, day out to get something really delivering.
Yeah, so we'll have to stay tuned for the next installment. Here's a different career question. You have spent your entire career with BP. If we look at our MBAs today, 5 years out, they have already, on average, switched companies at least twice. Okay, so it's a very different model, but we still do have people who really do want to make a leadership career within a large organization. Any words of advice or any thoughts based on your own experience about how to have both the large company, but also the possibility to create, to innovate, to be entrepreneurial?
I think the advantage of being in a large company, and particularly, I can only speak for BP, it's the only place I've been, but somewhere like BP has lots of different types of business in it. And so working in the chemicals business, it's actually a different industry from the E&P business or the refining business. So it has access to a number of different industries which have different competitive dynamics. It's like working in different companies almost. The advantage, though, is that you do build a track record and you do build a network of relationships which actually help you deliver, what's helped me deliver new ideas. So that's been the advantage of staying. I'm very surprised to find myself still at BP. I'd always thought that I'd be 5 years and then I'd move on, but every time I was about to move on, early in my career, some new opportunity came up or I saw something that needed to be done and I sort of wanted to go after it. What it does take, though, I think, to be successful, if you are going to stay in a big company and you want to move through that company, it does require that you continually refresh yourself in some way, that you have access to something outside of your corporate construct. And different people do it in different ways, but I do think it's important to have people outside, different contacts, different connections, different challenges that come from outside of your, the monoculture.
To allow you to keep the perspective broad.
That's right.
Okay. Another career question. You are BP's highest ranking woman executive. And on every list of the most powerful women in business and so on and so forth. So you are, whether intended or not, you're a role model for women who aspire to major leadership positions. What about there? Do you have any particular advice? Is it the same advice? Is it different? Any words from your experience to share?
I hate those lists. But people often ask me this question, and I find it quite difficult to answer because I don't think, there isn't a single formula. There isn't a set of rules which, if you follow them, you're bound to be successful. I think almost my only advice is is actually be yourself and be true to yourself. And the more you can understand what it is you really need and want out of your, doesn't matter whether you're a male or female actually, but I think sometimes women find it harder to work out what is it they really want out of a career, out of their lives, and investing some real time in understanding yourself and what you want and need, I think is very important, because the only way you're going to be successful is if you don't feel totally compromised the whole time, that you're happy with the choices you've made and that you give all of your energy to those choices. And that sometimes can be quite a difficult thing for women to do, because I know myself, I get pulled in all sorts of different directions. I've got two little girls who sort of pull me one way, I've got a career that pulls me another way, I've got aged parents that pull me another way, and sometimes, and quite frequently, I have to just stop and say, now, is this the balance I want? Is this actually what I want? And once I'm clear, yes, this is what I want and this is why I want it, then I can give myself 100%, make 100% commitment to that balance and those choices. But it does require a lot of constant re-examination of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and being really clear about what I need and what I want.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.